Hey gang, I am back! If you watched the video that I posted last Thursday, you will know that I have been in YouTube jail for almost a month now. For the last video that I actually posted on this channel way back on March 24th. Why? Because I gave a throwaway comment about a national event of great importance that happened at the very beginning of November of 2020. And in that throwaway comment, I gave a rather unpopular but honest opinion about said national event. The video came down and I basically was not able to act as a creator here, supposedly for only a week, but it was actually a lot longer than that. But I am back. We are ready and raring to go, and we're just going to dive right in today with this next installation of the Rolling Stone. You know, gang, sometimes events, they just perfectly coincide, or they just perfectly align, and they really show you where we're at as a society and the trajectory that we're actually going. Okay, what the end game is actually going to look like. And such an event actually just happened this past week, and the trajectory that it shows, it ain't pretty. So, as I'm sure you have seen, it's been plastered all over the news. In a suburb of Minneapolis, Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, Daunte Wright, who was a 20-year-old black man, was shot by the police, by the Brooklyn Center police. An officer specifically by the name of Kim Potter, a 27-year-old veteran of the force. What happened, as far as we know, as of this point, is that Wright was pulled over because he had expired license plates. And then they were going to, the officers noticed that he actually had an air freshener hanging up from his rearview mirror. And Minnesota has this insanely stupid law that says that you cannot hang anything from your rearview mirror. So there are cases, from the little that I've read, there are cases even, or it is entirely possible that a senior citizen, an invalid senior citizen who has one of the invalid driver's tags, they park in the handicap spaces and they have the tag. If they actually forget to take down that handicap tag from their rear view mirror when they back out of the parking space, they leave the parking lot and they get back onto the road, back onto the street, they technically can be pulled over and given a ticket because nothing is supposed to be hanging from your rearview mirror. It's an insanely stupid law. I would guess that it was passed by the Minnesota legislature simply as another way of raising revenue for the state government. Because of course, if nothing can hang from the rearview mirror, that means that you have more traffic stops, and more traffic stops means more tickets means more money, which translates into more revenue. So, Daunte Wright, he had expired plates, he had an air freshener hanging up from his rearview mirror, and then when they were checking his driver's license and they were reading out the number and everything, they found out that there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest for a gross misdemeanor. Now, as of right now, I do not believe that we are privy to exactly what constituted this gross misdemeanor. Gross misdemeanor is a classification under Minnesota law which could mean a myriad of things. It could be a DUI, it could be a DWI, it could be sexual assault in the 5th degree, it could be theft from anywhere between $500 and $1,000. It could be continued assault. So it covers a wide range of field. But Daunte Wright, he did have an outstanding warrant for his arrest for a gross misdemeanor. Okay? So then, after that, things get a little hairy. We don't know exactly what happened, but we do know the end result. Officer Kim Potter shot and killed Daunte Wright. Now, Potter claims that she was trying to reach for her taser, accidentally got her gun, and that's why she shot him. She was trying to tase him because apparently he was, according to the official police report, was trying to resist arrest. She went for what she thought was the taser to tase him, to subdue him, and what she was actually reaching for was her gun, and she actually shot him. Now, I have never been a police officer, so I have never been in a situation like that. So I cannot say with 100% certainty that no one could make a mistake like that in the heat of the moment. However, I will say that it is a little suspicious. My spider sense is going off a little bit that a veteran of 27 years, I believe, a 27-year-old veteran of the police force would make what I think I'm safe in saying is a rookie mistake like that. Rather odd, rather a little bit suspicious. But the long and the short of it is that Kim Potter has been summarily fired from the Brooklyn Center police force, and in addition, she has been charged herself with second-degree manslaughter. But this is where it gets illuminating, I think. This is where we have to leave the Daunte Wright story, and we have to switch over to the next story. Because like I said, sometimes stories, they align perfectly to show us where we are in our present moment. So, back in January, in the infamous storming of our Temple of Democracy, this U.S. Capitol, which, let me tell you, it ain't a temple of democracy. The very fact that people were calling it a temple of democracy is worrisome. It's very French Revolution. But regardless, during that riot, okay, it wasn't a storming, it wasn't an attempted coup, it was a riot, which, again, right, we had just gone, back in January, we had gone through an entire half year of riots and looting and burnings in Chicago, in New York, in Philadelphia, in Minneapolis, in Seattle, in Portland, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, even down south, in Houston and Austin, I believe. There had been some minor, we had actual succession. If you remember Chadistan, and people were trying to duplicate that in, I believe it was Minneapolis, definitely no, in Chicago, they were trying to duplicate that, where these Antifa BLM people basically took over several city blocks. They put up roadblocks, they put up barriers, they put up signs that said, "Leaving the USA." For all intents and purposes, these people wanted to create their own country, the protectorate of Chazistan, or the Republic of Chazistan, or the Principality of Chadis, whatever it is, Stan. After half a year of that, there was another riot at the Capitol, and this time, the Capitol Police came out with lethal force. Something that all those other riots and lootings and burnings, the police, whether they were local, state, or federal, actually, they acted with a lot of restraint. They used tear gas, they used impact munitions, which are not actually lethal bullets. They're like rubber bullets, so they're supposed to cause, a lot of pain when they actually impact you, but it's actually, again, not usually going to penetrate you and therefore cause you to die. And in some cases, the police were actually told to stand down. We saw this several times, where the police actually retreated in the face of these mobs. And even when the police, to protect federal property, as in Portland, when they were protecting the federal courthouse there, or when they were simply acting in self-defense, and they used the tear gas and the impact munitions, even that was an excessive use of force per the left. The ACLU actually filed several lawsuits saying that the police were trying to prohibit and to negate people's right to assemble and petition. Because, of course, looting is exactly the same thing as getting a bunch of your neighbors together and holding a rally and then petitioning the government to redress some wrong. But that was all changed, like I said. On January 6th, the police came out with lethal force, and one person actually died. Ashli Babbit, 35-year-old woman who was also an Air Force veteran. She was shot and she was killed. As of this week, we still do not know the name of the officer who shot and killed her. But we also know that he will not be facing any charges. No charges are going to be filed against this anonymous officer who shot and killed Ashli Babbit. Now, to be clear, according to the video footage that we have, which shows Ashli Babbit in the Capitol, she does not have a gun. She does not have a weapon. She's not trying to pick up anything with her hands. She's at one point, I think, pounding on a door, and that's it. She had no weapons whatsoever. But she was shot and killed. So we have Kim Potter in Brooklyn Center who shoots and kills Daunte Wright. She is fired. She is going to be brought up on second-degree manslaughter charges. Over here, an anonymous officer shoots and kills Ashli Babbit, and nothing is going to happen. Absolutely nothing. Now again, you might say, okay, Nate, the circumstances are entirely different. Ashli Babbit was part of a mob that was actually trying, to storm the Capitol building. Daunte Wright was just a guy who had gotten pulled over by the cops, and now he's dead. You're comparing apples and oranges. Okay, on the surface, that might seem like a valid criticism game, but I don't think I think the validity of that criticism would be much stronger if, like I said before, we had not gone an entire half year of riots, lootings, arson attacks. And we were basically told, oh, nothing is wrong. People are just peacefully protesting. They're mostly peaceful protests, as was famously said. I think that was some reporter from CNN who actually said he was standing right in front of a building that had been set on fire. And he said, well, these are mostly peaceful protests. And Oceania is a mostly free society, pal. That criticism, though, that I'm comparing apples and oranges, would be stronger if we hadn't gone through all of that. Because, okay, a riot that is trying to break into and trying to set on fire the federal courthouse in Portland is not much different than people going in and, going inside the Capitol building and rioting in there. There's really no difference. You might say, well, lawmakers were in there. Some of them were, yes. But again, why couldn't the Capitol Police have simply done what had been done in Chicago, in Seattle, in Portland, and in Minneapolis when they were actually able to do this? Discharge tear gas. Get out the impact munitions to disperse the crowd. Why was lethal force used in that situation, but not in all the others? It's a valid question. Now, the official story is that it's very, very hard to prove that an officer actually violated someone's constitutional rights or civil rights, and that's why this anonymous Capitol Police officer is not going to face any sort of charges, whatever. And I call bollocks on it because we have a third story. This actually just broke this month in April, because somebody leaked the body cam footage of the incident, but this actually happened in last December. 2 Virginia police officers, this is this third story, in Windsor, Virginia, they stopped and pepper sprayed an active duty U.S. Army Lieutenant, Karen Nazario. Okay, because, and this is a story that goes, I don't really want to get a lot into the weeds on this one, gang. People are of course saying that it's obviously racist. There's a bit more to the story than that. But the long and the short of it is that 2 of the officers, and again, these 2 officers, they didn't immediately just go up to this guy, this Army lieutenant who happens to be black and Latino, and pepper spray him. They asked him, they pulled him over because he was going below the speed limit. He did not have any valid license plates on his car. The lieutenant says he had just bought this vehicle and he had the temporary license plate taped to the rear windshield. But even that doesn't get him off the hook for that, because technically that too is illegal in the state of Virginia. So long and the short of it, these 2 cops, they flash him because he doesn't have valid license plate. Okay, that is where it's supposed to be. He's going below the speed limit, and then and the windows are heavily tinted, so they can't see inside. They don't know really what's going on in there. And the Army lieutenant, instead of immediately pulling over as soon as he saw them flash him, he drives a mile to this gas station, and then he pulls over. Now, apologists have been trying to say that this is actually pretty common in Windsor because there is no real good place to pull over. But again, the lack of license plates and the tinted windows, again, changes the circumstances just a little bit. And then on top of that, these 2 officers asked this lieutenant numerous times. They asked Lieutenant Nazario numerous times to exit the vehicle, and he did not actually do it. I was listening to Graham Allen's podcast, actually, who's part of the Blaze TV. I listened because he was actually talking specifically about this story. I wanted to get another perspective on it. And Allen, who is also a vet, said, that is also curious, because usually the military drills it into its recruits and its men's heads to comply with the police. Okay, if you get pulled over, if you're off the base and you get pulled over, comply with them, do what they say, because they don't want any trouble between the military and the local police. So anyway, to get back on track, Lieutenant Nazario is actually suing these 2 officers, Joe Gutierrez, who has been fired, the Latino officer, who is actually the guy who pepper sprayed Lieutenant Nazario, has been fired, and Officer Daniel Crocker, who was actually the white police officer at the scene, who was also, according to the full 6-minute body cam footage that Allen played on his podcast, was the one who was actually trying to defuse the situation, trying to calm things down. But anyway, Lieutenant Nazario and his lawyer are suing former Officer Gutierrez and Officer Crocker for violating his constitutional rights. Okay, so Lieutenant Nazario is suing because he claims that his constitutional rights were violated. But nothing is being done again to this anonymous officer who shot and killed Ashli Babbit herself, a U.S. Air Force veteran. Because, it's very, very hard to prove that constitutional rights were violated. Yeah, maybe when they're dead, it's a little easier. Did you ever think of that? The long and the short of it, gang, the point that I have been building up to, is that what these stories indicate, when they're taken all together, is that the racialized vision of society has arrived. It is here. And unless something major happens to change the trajectory that we're on, it's going to stay here. So apparently, if you shoot and kill a black individual, you will have the full extent of the law thrown at you. Now again, to go back to Kim Potter, it is entirely possible that she should justly be charged with second-degree manslaughter. Because like I said, it's a little suspicious that a 27-year-old veteran of the force would mistake her piece, her actual weapon, for her taser. Suspicious. So, it could be an entirely just charge. But the fact stands that if you act against certain segments of the population, the full force of the law will be brought to you. Or actually, I should say the full force of the court system, of the system itself, will be laid on you like a hammer. Like the hammer of Thor, the hammer of God. Meanwhile, if you shoot and kill people who are in another segment of society, nothing is going to happen to you. Remember, Ashli Babbit was a Trump supporter. In the video cam footage, we see her wearing a Trump flag as sort of a cape, which is not something that I would personally do. But, again, that's neither here nor there. We know for certain that she was a Trump voter and a Trump supporter, and that she was there on January 6th to support Trump. She can be shot and killed without any repercussions, whatever that word is. Kim Babbit, on the other hand, is having the book thrown at her. Again, could be entirely justified, but still that contradiction remains, because if Kim Potter unjustly killed Daunte Wright, which is entirely possible, then it's also true that that anonymous officer unjustly killed Ashli Babbit, a woman, again, who had no weapons, was not actively shooting, was, as of this time, simply doing what other segments of society have been doing all summer, all fall, and all winter long: rioting. And we were told it was no big deal. Now, this, of course, is terrifying, because if you have a racialized vision of justice, then that means that we are not equal under the law. The law only applies to certain people. The law will only be enforced against certain people. Other people can get away with whatever they want. We immediately create not a meritocracy, not a natural aristocracy like the founders said, but we create a synthetic aristocracy. We create a fossilized structured system where, because of their ideology, plus their skin color, plus their orientation, plus their identity, certain people are immune to the consequences of their actions, regardless of what those consequences are. Regardless of what those actions are, they are immune to the consequences of them. Meanwhile, other people who, let's just be honest, Ashli Babbit was just doing what she had probably seen whole mobs of people do all the second half of 2020. But if you do that, if you act in the exact same way, then you will be punished. Sometimes you will be ultimately punished, and nothing is going to happen. It sends a message, gang. It sends a message that you cannot expect the protection of the laws. You cannot expect the safety, the protection of society. The protection and the defense and the safety, it's all for one side. It's not for you if you don't check the right marks. And that's dangerous because without justice, you can't have freedom. I would argue you can't even have a flourishing society. That is story number one.